the car that I bought that became, when I got into racing, though, was the 66 Plymouth Chrysler came out with what they call a street Hemi in 1966. And that was the most powerful stock car that you could buy. I remember I paid, it was $1,000 extra for the engine. I paid like $4,000 for the car. And of course, everybody was buying it. So everybody would say, who's got the fastest car, the fastest car in the city. And we used to hang out at Richard's Car Hop at Wellington Circle years ago. And there was a couple of other guys that we used to hang out with, and we kind of raced. And we set up a race one time on 93, starting from the exit Roosevelt Circle, and we measured off a quarter mile, and the quarter mile marker was the exit for Stoneham Spot Pond there. And what we had, we set up the two. Both of us had Hemis. I was a little heavier than my partner at the time, so I let him. I said, "I'm going to have you drive," because this other guy came with he took his seats out of his car. He lightened up his car. I said, "Well, I'm a little heavier than you, so why don't you get in the car?" And you race the guy, my partner. And so what happened is we had somebody standing in the middle with a flashlight, just flinging down the flashlight, just like you saw in the movie American Graffiti. And the guy said 1, 2, but before he came down with the flashlight, the other guy took off, right? And then my guy took off and tried to catch him, but didn't catch him. So we were screaming that he jumped the light. So we did it over again. The second time, he beat him. He beat the other guy. I think the guy whose name was Majnik at the time. He had the Dodge. I had the Plymouth. So, but then he claimed that he got a flat tire. So we were going to do it a third time. Then the cops came when we both took off and got away before the cops came. So the race, there was some guy had a $50 bet on this race in Richards. That's where we met the guy. He said, "I'll get $50. Says Travers will win." Blah blah blah. So I said, I didn't have any plans. It just happened to be a friend of mine, So he got his $50 back because the race finally it never took place because of the first time he jumped the light. The second time he claims his tire went flat, and we took off, and the race never took place, except it did when we went to the drags at Sanford, Maine. And that's when I was driving at Sanford, Maine. It was called a grudge match, and I beat him straight out there. I had a what they call a bigger numerical rear end in him, like 488s. Well, these other guys were going around with 411s, they used to say. So mine would accelerate a lot faster. So, my car, I believe, was cut in the 12s at the time, low 12s. But we did that for like about a year. And then, the best you could do, you might win $125 after beating the heck out of your car. So I said to Dave, we got to do something else. And so that's when he worked at Commonwealth Dodge in Boston. And his friend, our friend Leo, who was also the guy who helped us out, worked there. And he called me up one day and said, Rich, listen, they got us an A100 here, and they want to get rid of us, a slant 6 and so forth. What if we make an offset out of it and race that? Maybe it'll be much faster. I said, yeah, let's do that. So they sold the car, the A100 to me for $1,600, and we built the Dodge Fever from that truck. And by taking the engine out of my street Hemi, we revamped the engine, put an injection on a fuel injection, Hillborn, and We made a sub chassis for the pickup truck. And when we first played around with it, we were going to run it on four wheels in an altered class. In fact, I think we turned in the nines with it, some 130 plus miles an hour when it was on four wheels. But then he tested it one time, Dave, and over at Chrysler in Framingham, I guess it was. Things started going up in the air. So it lifted off the ground a little bit, right? So that's when I had the idea about wheel standing, although there was, for about a year, the Little Red Wagon would do wheel stands at the drag strips. So I says, let's build a wheel stander because the wheel stander, they'll pay you to come to the track. You won't break break your motor, running it 4 or 5 times and putting all kinds of money, and you're going to win what, $200, $300? That's it. But they were paying the performers to come at $750.
Wow.
So that's what I did. I wound up we wound up building the Dodge Fever truck, and it only ran for three months. We built it like in 67. We tested it on four wheels in 67 and 68. We ran it May through July. I got sick and couldn't make a booking. We had that booked all the way through the summer. I had to log almost $50,000 in bookings back in 68. That was a lot of money. And going around the country. But unfortunately, I was the driver, and Dave was the mechanic. And we tried to make I was in the hospital, so I couldn't be driver, but he didn't want to miss a booking we had up in Canada. So he did it himself, and he made. I understand he from what he told me, he made two runs, and the third run he flipped it and crashed it, and that was the end of Dodge Fever.
Oh no!
So by the end of that summer, 68, I was still kind of recovering, but he got a hold of a 68 Superbird or a 68 Plymouth, and says we could put, by the end of that summer we were racing in B gas in this thing we called the Rumblebee. I was racing that in B gas, but at the end of the season, I said, Dave, this is the same thing what we were doing before. There's no money in it. So we kind of split apart. He went his way and built another car, and I went and funny thing, I was driving. I used to work at Smyrla's grocery store in Brookline and delivering groceries and stuff, and I'm on Soldiers Field Road with a car, and I see this little red A100 truck, at the lights there on Everett Street and Soldiers Field Road. And it's some appliance company. So I yelled at the guy, hey, you want to sell that truck? He says, yeah, I'll sell it. I said, there's the number on the side. I called the guy, and I bought the A100. He had a little slant six for like $700. And then I built the Dodge material truck, which I ran for about 4 to 5 years. And we've put a supercharger on that one. We're turning out over 1,500 horsepower. I think I broke at least 4 track records around the country. And finally, I got out of the business after about 5 years.
Well, now...
And I went to the taxi business in Boston after that.
Now, when you say you broke a record, what kind of record was it? Are you talking about wheel standing or quarter mile or what?
Yeah, quarter mile wheel standing. It was up in the air on 2 wheels, and we ran the whole track. And the records at the time, where I was turning in the tens at over 125 miles an hour. This is on 2 wheels. I mean, even even now that may be going a little bit faster, but not much. You're up in the air and you got the wind against you and everything. Matter of fact, what I did, a little detail, you had the wheel wells and that thing would kind of lift it off the air. I think what happened was with Dave, what happened is that it lifted the rear wheels off, one of the rear wheels, and it probably twisted the truck. That might have what caused the accident. So what I did on my new truck is I cut three 2-inch wheels in the wheel well so that the air could flow through that. It came, before we did that, it came down nicely like a 3-point landing. But after we did that, it kind of just slammed down, because you couldn't play with the engine with a supercharger. You couldn't go on and off of it. You know what I mean? You'd blow a gasket. You might throw a rod or something like that. You had to be on it fully or off it. And but in the second truck, of course, the first truck we kind of just aimed it. We played with tire pressure to try to keep it straight on the track. Had no way of steering it. But the second truck, I was able to put on these dual spot disc brakes. In other words, 2 of the pads would stop it with your foot brake, and each of the other pads would be a right, one for the right, one for the left. So if you up in the air, it started floating one way, you could pull the right one and it would come back on the track. You could steer it while it was in the air.
So basically,
that?
You're steering it with the brakes.
That's correct. Just like the old tractor plow. Right. That's what we did. And that's I got a tip from some of the other competitors about that. In fact, one guy called Roy Trevino, his name was. He used to run a little Chevrolet wheel stander, and he told me what he was doing. I kind of got my tips from him. I learned a lot from some of the other professionals. It was a very friendly group, even though we caravanned around the country. In those days, there was about a dozen of us. I don't know how many there are left now on doing that, but it was quite entertaining and very popular back then.